एकम् अक्षरम् हृदि निरन्तरम् भासते स्वयं लिप्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं छिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम् देहं जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भातः को भावयुतः कुतो धिय दृष्टात्मनिष्ठा सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं Namo Ramana. Whenever Vani Madam asks whether there is anything useful I can contribute to this group, it has been my practice to take a topic from the Wednesday classes that we have, the Wednesday satsangs that we have during that period. For instance, the last 2-3 interactions that I have been allowed with this esteemed group have been on Sri Dakshinamurti Stotram, and what was covered or what could be covered in 14 or 15 Wednesday sessions, we took about 2-3 talks here in this group to cover the same ground, of course with a little bit of the details having had to be missed out. Similar is the approach with this interaction also, that we are now discussing Adi Shankarars, Viveka Chudamani in our Wednesday classes. And Bhagwan, along with Drigdrishya Vivekam, this is one work of Adi Shankara, which he has translated completely into Tamil. All the 581 verses, though it is a free translation, and sometimes the paragraphs or the verses are mixed up in order. A different order is used by Bhagwan. But to me, all the verses have been covered in Bhagwan's translation. All the verses of the Acharya have been covered. Today, we are going to have a look at the overview that Bhagwan has given on the work. The overview on Viveka Chudamani that Bhagwan has given, this brings into focus the whole area covered in the work without going into the details. And I would like to bring in self-enquiry where it is appropriate. But if there is one aim of this particular interaction, only one thing that I would leave you with during and at the end of this interaction, if you ask me, then that is the significance of the Atma Anatma Vivekam. That can we meditate on the significance of the Atma Anatma Vivekam alongside discussing the overview of Viveka Chudamani as well as the points of connection with self-enquiry. That would be the relative aim of this talk or this interaction. As I said, this is one work which Bhagwan, along with Drigdrishi Vivekam, has translated into Tamil quite early in the sense, even in his Virupaksha days. What is the significance of that? That when he found some of the scriptures, they narrated his inner experience. And he seems to have found, even in those early days, that Viveka Chudamani matches with the direct Brahmanubhavam that he had as a 16.5-year-old youngster in the Madurai home. And that is the probable reason why the notation in the translation is there that even in his Virupaksha days, he has translated this. The importance being that he has himself said that he attained the Brahman without even knowing that there is something called Brahman. Sivaprakasham Pillai is one of his earliest devotees and disciples. He says, the one who attained Brahman without knowing the term Brahman. And to such a one, he says, when he was reading the scriptures for the benefit of Palaniswami, who was interested in going through the scriptures, he would bring the books from the town, but he himself would be struggling with the language. Bhagavan, out of compassion, would take the book from him and explain it and read it for him. And Bhagavan says, that is when I realized my inner experience has been mentioned in the scriptures. So the act of translation of Viveka Chudamani and Drigdrishi Vivekam in those early days itself indicates that these are scriptures which were identical to the expression, to any expression that could best be given, because the Jnani's Anubhava itself is beyond expression. Bhagavan himself says, Ekam Aksharam Hridi Nirantaram Bhasate Swayam Likyate Katam. How to express that which is beyond the mind. However, the pointers, the best of the pointers are given by Adi Shankara, and Bhagavan translate them as these are the scriptures that validate my experience, or quite more appropriately, these are the scriptures that are validated by this Jnani's Anubhava. Now, Bhagavan, in this overview, begins with his preamble to Who Am I? That all living beings seek to be happy always without a trace of sorrow. And this is also indicated in our natural inclination to be free of any ailments. The freedom from ailments that we seek is indicative that it is not in our nature to suffer from those ailments. And Bhagavan says there is a supreme love seen for oneself. Keep in mind that we are going to focus on this distinction, this Viveka between self and non-self, and how Bhagavan helps us take the benefit of this Mula Viveka. That Bhagavan says that there is a supreme love seen in everyone for oneself, and the reason for love should only be happiness. That there is the supreme happiness within each one of us. That is why there is supreme love for oneself. Usually, this is condemned as selfishness and dropped at the earliest possible moment. But Bhagavan, the rarest of rare scientists that he is, if one may call the Jnani that, he is finding the reason for why in every jiva, every limited being, there is this great love for oneself. The plant too somehow wants to survive, protect itself, and move itself towards the sunlight. Nowadays, they find that plant communities have great communication in the face of some threat. They all communicate with each other for self-protection. There is seen a great love for oneself. And Bhagavan gives us the positive reason for that, that the Paramatma is within each one of us. That is the reason for this love for oneself. But we are ignorant of this happiness that is our very nature. That is what we are. We are this true happiness. And we are seeking that happiness, but we are seeking it in all the non-self, in all the wrong places. Whereas all the time, it is the supreme happiness is present within the self. And is there a time which can be pointed out as, see, this experience indicates to you that the happiness is in the self? Bhagavan says, in deep sleep, everyone enjoys this happiness. That is one's own nature. It is the nature of our Atman. And we forget that. We are ignorant of it. And we go in search of material gains. We feel happiness is there in that possession or this possession, the Anatma, or that relationship or this relationship, the Anatma again, or even the dualities proposed by various paths as pathways to the truth. Even in those dualities and triads, they are all Anatman in reference to the Atma Anatma Viveka. Therefore, Bhagavan says that ignorant of this Atma Anatma Vivekam, and that the real happiness is present in the Atma, one searches for this happiness in Iha Para Sukham. You go to Vedantam, of which the general commentators say that Viveka Chudamani is drawing the essence of Vedanta. Like Vedanta itself is like a forest of flowers spread in many places, in many ways, whereas Viveka Chudamani is a gathering of all the flowers and bringing them to your backyard, the kitchen garden, where you can have them in a row and pluck them and offer them to the Lord. The orderly arrangement of the essence of Vedanta is what the general commentators say about Viveka Chudamani. But we are going to see Bhagavan is going to go a step further. The praise that the Jnani gives on something praiseworthy, you will find it is the most effusive. There is nothing to hold back in the praise of the Jnani. When Bhagavan praises Muruganar in his attainment, Muruganar writes some work about his Anubhava. Bhagavan corrects it to praise Muruganar even more effusively. So when the general commentators on Viveka Chudamani say that it is the essence of the Upanishads, Bhagavan goes one step further. He says that having seen this, that essentially ignorant of the happiness in the self and seeking it in the non-self, everybody is suffering. Shiva, taking compassion on these suffering sadhakas, he takes the human form of Adi Shankara, Bhagavan says, Adi Shankara, and writes a commentary on the Prasthanatraya. What is the Prasthanatraya? It is all well known to this esteemed audience. In fact, you will all realize that Vaniji has been effusive in her praise of me in the knowledge of Bhagavan's teachings as well as the Vedanta. And it's it's only because she has such a great heart that she has been able to give that praise like that. Now, here coming to the Viveka Chudamani itself, Bhagavan says Shiva himself took the form of Adi Shankara and wrote a commentary on the Prasthanatraya, that is the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita. But then he found that this was not of use to those mumukshus, those interested in mukti, but who did not have the required scholarship. The commentaries on Prasthanatraya, if you take Brahma Sutra Bhashya and its commentary, it requires a great amount of scholarship, a detailed look into logic, an interest in developing counter arguments and seeing how counter arguments are countered, if one can put it like that. And that is how the Brahma Sutra Bhashyas are commented on and talked about. So there is a great deal of scholarship required. And the Acharya finds that that is not present, though mumukshutva is present in many sincere seekers. So what he does, Bhagavan says, he takes the essence of the Prasthana Traya itself, not the essence of Vedanta alone, not the essence of Upanishads alone, but Viveka Chudamani, Bhagavan praises with even more effusiveness. He says it is the essence of the Prasthanatraya. It is, if you assimilate the contents of Viveka Chudamani and take it that these are Upadeshams directly coming from Acharya Shankara, the living present Guru, and now through Bhagavan, that Guru Mukhena we are getting, and that Guru is saying this is the essence of Prasthanatraya, that what is the root, the very acme of the contents of Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Brahma Sutras is present in Viveka Chudamani. So they have gathered the attention of the listener and brought the listener to the truth that the plowing through all those works with the required scholarship is made easy by the creation of the simple work called Viveka Chudamani. Viveka itself is discrimination. Chudamani is the highest of jewels or crown jewels. So it is crown jewel of discrimination. That is why this particular interaction, at least, I would like each of us to take away the discrimination between self and non-self for exploration and implementation today. Now, having brought out that Viveka Chudamani is the essence of the Prasthanatraya, what is the content in the whole work? Bhagavan lays out the contents in about 10 or 12 paragraphs. So the whole 581 verses, which has been translated in Tamil by Bhikshu Sastrigal in the early 19th century, he has written more than 670 verses. And that easy translation into Tamil in 670 verses out of 581 is because there are verses where 4 lines are present in Viveka Chudamani, and there are verses with 2 lines. Wherever verses with 4 lines are present, that Bhikshu Shastrigal has used 2 verses. So, roughly, the increase in the verses in Tamil you will find is because Bhikshu Shastrigal has used 2 additional verses, and Ashram has come out with the publication on Bhagavan's translation of the work with the matching of his translation with verse to verse of Bhikshu Shastrigal. Bhikshu Shastrigal has translated the whole Viveka Chudamani into Tamil in simple Tamil, and Bhagavan's translation, which is available in English and Tamil, the Tamil being the original, covers verse for verse. The paragraphs are fixed on the left-hand side of the printed page. On the right-hand side are the verses of Viveka Chudamani. So not a single aspect of Viveka Chudamani has been left out in the translation. And you will find that Bhagavan's translation is an easy way, easy prose, which connects the thought streams in the verses. Sometimes in the poetry, there may not be the connection, but as it is the translation in prose form, you will find that Bhagavan brings in the connection between the verses as there is a flow of the topics, and we are able to make in easy reading the sense of the whole work. And Bhagavan begins like this, that the work begins by saying that we are blessed with the rarest blessing, having taken human form. And it goes into some of the traditional uh, paths in which self-realization used to be considered achievable. This is about 1500 years ago. The versification goes that having taken human form, having taken male form, having read into the Vedantic scriptures, having understood it in a scholarly way, and having got the discrimination between self and non-self, such a one goes on to the next stage of attaining self-realization and abiding in the self as one's very nature. But then, suppose even one doesn't have this sequence, one's life is not falling in this sequence, but has three of the essential qualifications, that is Manushyatva, Mumukshutva, Mahapurusha Samshraya. These three, if someone has, forget about male, female, forget about Shastra and learning, which is the essence of which is going to come in this work. Forget about great scholarliness in the Shastras, but if you have Manushyatva, which all of us have, that is the rarest of rare gifts. We can easily meditate on that if you take the living beings, the probability of being born as a human being according to Paramahamsa is 80 lakh to 1. Now if you include non-living beings and atoms, then the probability becomes even more less that amongst such probability, I am sitting here as a human being. Now, it is not only a rarest of rare gift for which I have to be grateful, it also comes with a responsibility. I am part and parcel of this cosmos made of all this, and I have this discriminatory ability that is available for human beings. So it comes with a responsibility which the Acharya is going to make us aware of in a few sentences. If you have Manushyatva and Mumukshutva, you understand that the liberation is the real happiness. There was this congregation which I was seeing on TV. It is a US congregation. There were about 3,000 people in that hall. And the one who was talking was taking them through many happy statements and ended up that sequence of happy statements by saying, by asking, are you all happy now? And each one of them in the 3,000, not a single hand laid down. Everybody raised up their hand. And then he said, I am going to provide you with a week of food. They are all stored in the refrigerators all around. They will be heated up and given to you. Now I am going to close the doors. And 1 week later, they will be opened and you can go out. A few minutes, everybody was digesting this. And then he asked, how many of you feel happy now? Not a single hand went up. And then he pointed out, don't you see that the consciousness, the spirit, essentially can be happy only when it is free, only when it is not in constraints, in limitations. What is this freedom? How to inquire into freedom? The ethical ones say that freedom is not the ability to do what you want, is not the capacity to enjoy whatever you think of. Those who follow ethics, they say that if you give rules by yourself, if you give rules of living that you yourself decide are applicable to everyone, and you channelize your consciousness to live within those rules, then your goal is not outside of you. So far as the goal is outside of you, there is no real freedom. When the goal is brought within you, within the self, when the goal is within the self, that you frame your own rules and live by those rules, that is when you get somewhere near real freedom, is the teachings that ethical teachers have. That it is not in enjoying those objects or those circumstances which you want, going to Kashmir on a 10-day holiday, being amidst tulips and this snow in a hot summer when it is hot summer down south. That is, of course, surrounding yourself with thoughts that you like. But then that is still keeping the happiness outside the self. And when you keep happiness outside the self, in the non-self, what is it that you imply? You imply that there is no happiness in the self, and the self is bound by the happinesses determined by outer circumstances. Both these are the implications of fixing happiness in the non-self. The freedom is also implicitly ruled out. Happiness is also implicitly ruled out. So the second qualification that the Acharya gives is, doesn't matter if you are following the sequence required for liberation. If you have the seeking of liberation along with the Manushyatva, and you have the Mahapurusha Samshrayam. What is this Mahapurusha Samshrayam? Mahapurusha Samshrayam is to understand that the Acharya's teaching are eminently worthy of sincere following, sincere adherence. As the ethical people say, frame the rules by yourself and live by them. Here the Acharya is saying, can you follow the rules I have set for you and have faith in them, as this is what is going to lead me to liberation. That is Mahapurusha Samshrayam, to come under the teachings of a great one like Bhagavan and Acharya, and have this humility and faith to adopt those teachings and live by them. If you have these three, that is enough, says the Acharya. That's what Bhagavan says, that the Acharya says are the requirement for the disciple for to follow the teaching. Now, suppose you have these three. You have these three, that you have Manushatva, you have Mumukshutva, you have Mahapurusha Samshrayam. Suppose you don't put effort, that is where the responsibility is brought by Acharya. In Viveka Chudamani, he spends time on this. That suppose you don't put effort, then there is nobody more foolish than you. Having got Manushatva, having got Mumukshutva, having got Mahapurusha Samshrayam. Put in all the efforts that you can. That is all that is required. Now everything boils down to the sadhana, and while doing sadhana, you will find that the Guru is with you. In the days that, if I may be permitted to share a personal experience, in the days I used to stay in Tiruvannamalai for practicing Atma Vicharam in 2004, there would be times when that I had I had money for food, so I was lucky that I didn't have anything to do except to listen to the Parayanam in the ashram. I wouldn't go anywhere near the administration. Just stay in my room, come to the ashram only for doing self-enquiry. In the room also do self-enquiry. But there would be times when that the enquiry would not be possible. I would be too tired and I wouldn't be able to enquire, but there will be consciousness, there will be wakefulness. And somehow I would say, Ramana, Ramana, Ramana. I didn't know then that the Guru was coming for me. And just 2 or 3 times repeating the Saguna Upasana, the holding of Bhagavan, somehow the strength will come back and I would be able to do Atma Vicharam again. And that is the assurance given by the Acharya and Bhagavan, that follow the teachings. They are verily the Ishvara Shakti. They are not the Gurus alone. They are the Ishvara Shakti. They are abiding in the self forever. You will find that the Guru is after you. And when Durbal ka Bal Ram is a truth. When you put in all your efforts sincerely and you find yourself weak, you will immediately find the Guru's hand, the Ishvara's hand coming in support. So this, what is the requirement is said. Then the importance of sadhana is said. What is the route that the Acharya is going to give in the whole work? In the whole work, what is the starting that Bhagavan had given? That due to ignorance of one's own innate nature as happiness, because of that ignorance, there is suffering, there is bondage. Therefore, the Acharya logically says, from knowledge, we are going to have liberation. So the whole work is laid out in such a way that the root cause for suffering is placed at the doors of ignorance, not knowing the happiness within oneself, and the liberation or the freeing from bondage is going to be the arrival of knowledge. Now, what kind of knowledge? What kind of ignorance? Let us go back to self-enquiry a little bit and find the connect between Viveka Chudamani and self-enquiry. For this, we are going to refer to verses 10 and 11 of Ulladu Narpadu. That is, what is knowledge? What is ignorance? And what is that knowledge that is going to bring us liberation? Because here the Acharya is saying the root cause of bondage is ignorance, and the root sadhana that is going to bring us liberation is the knowledge. What kind of knowledge? In verse number 10, Bhagavan says, and here we will be moving a little bit into the area of dualities so that we get a strong understanding of the self, non-self. So the gift of this whole uh, interaction lies in these few verses that I am going to take from Ulladu Narpadu. If you can catch on to this, then the sadhana is going to be minimally dissipative in energy. The practice of the sadhaka will involve minimal dissipation of energy if one understands this Viveka. How does Bhagavan discriminate between knowledge and ignorance? In fact, Bhagavan says in verse number 10, in the world, the knowledge arises simultaneously with ignorance, and ignorance arises simultaneously with knowledge. Both form a duality. Now, how is this? Once Bhagavan is coming down from the hill after his walk, one of the devotees, Ramana Padananda, he has come and inquired in the hall, where is Bhagavan, where is Bhagavan? And they have told he has gone walk up the hill. So he is rushing to the foothill, happily sees Bhagavan coming down and says, "Whoa, Bhagavan, I have had darshan of you. How happy I am." He immediately prostrates and Bhagavan asks him, "Why don't you say that you gave darshan to me?" That means any relative happening in this world, the way in which you describe it, what you call as I know that I am having darshan of Ramana, is a relative statement. It arises along with the ignorance that the same event could be described in a million other ways, especially in the one other way in which Bhagavan is putting that, why don't you say that you gave darshan to me? There are many other ways in which the same event can be described. So this knowledge that I had darshan of Bhagavan arises along with the ignorance of all the other ways in which the same event could have been described. And what is knowledge for one could be ignorance for another. So the knowledge in the world arises along with ignorance. This is a duality. Therefore, inquire for whom is this duality of knowledge and ignorance. Then the root ignorance of the ego being demolished and the self alone being realized, this duality of knowledge and ignorance will drop away. So what is real knowledge? The real knowledge is the self-knowledge. And what is Ramana using here? He is using the root duality of self, non-self to completely demolish the area of knowledge and ignorance in this world. It is not only that this duality of knowledge and ignorance in the objective space that Bhagavan is displacing. In the earlier verse, in verse number 9, he would have said, all dualities and triads, இரட்டைகள் முப்புடிகள் என்றும் ஒன்று பற்றி இருப்பவாம். They all arise holding on to the root dyad of self, non-self. All the dyads in the world, including like and dislike, which we use in mindfulness, including all other dyads, the desire and hatred, the clarity and confusion, all the dyads arise holding on to a root dyad. Manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam margarjavaat vrittayastvaham vrittimashiritaha vrittayo mano vidyaham mana. In Upadesha Saram, Bhagavan clarifies that what is this mind? This mind is nothing but thoughts, and all the thoughts are dependent on the I thought. Therefore, consider the whole mind to be a form or multiplicity of forms that is primarily only the I thought. It is only the I form. From this, we can derive the fact that the I and non-I is the root dyad on which all dyads are superimposed. That means from any dyad, They arise because only the root dyad is still left unattended. Therefore, Bhagavan says, அறியாமை விட்டு அறிவென்றாம் அறிவு விட்டு அறியாமை என்றாம் இவ்வறிவும் அறியாமையும் யார்க்கென்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறியும் அறிவே அறிவு. That means you see the basis of all meditations. The basis of all meditations is the Atma Anatma Vivekam. Because if a meditation uses a dyad, uses the dropping of one aspect of the dyad or both aspects of the dyad, but the self is left. How does that dyad arise? It arises only after the rising of self, non-self. Now, in the verse number 11, Bhagavan drives home the fact. He says that அறிவுறும் தன்னை அறியாது அயலை அறிவது அறியாமை அன்றி அறிவோ. That the self is the nature of knowledge. All non-self is perceived by the self. Therefore, knowing anything other than the self is ariyamai, is ignorance. That means all the earlier area of knowledge and ignorance simultaneously arising, that whole area is arising on the basis of self-ignorance. So Bhagavan suggests or points out that whole area, what we are calling now as knowledge of objective things, is all ignorance. Now, if one has this Viveka, that all the dyads and triads arise only after the root dyad of self, non-self, and that is what Bhagavan is using in Ulladu Narpadu. இரட்டைகள் முப்புடிகள் என்றும் ஒன்று பற்றி இருப்பவாம் அறிவு அறியாமை யாருக்கு அறிவுறும் தன்னை அறியாது அயலை அறிவது. All the dyads and triads arise holding on to I. Then the knowledge and ignorance in the world arise only for someone. You are the one who is real knowledge, and all the other things are known by you. Therefore, without knowing yourself, knowing anything else is only ignorance, is it not? He asks. Now, that if you take and bring it here, that what is it that the Acharya is giving us as knowledge? Knowledge of the self. Atma Jnanam. What is this knowledge of the self? The self, that itself is knowledge. It is not there is a knowledge that is there apart from the self. The very nature of the self itself is Ananda, which we have forgotten. The very nature of the self is Jnanam, which we are looking for in the non-self, which is Jadam. The very nature of the self is existence. It is existence, it is Jnanam, it is Anandam. But not as three different things. Therefore, in sadhana, you can check this. You can check this in self-enquiry, that all the dyads and triads, if you see the practice of for whom, you will find that in that self-attention, they are not there. In the self-attention, no non-self is there. Self-attention is the precursor to self-luminous self. Self-attention is an effort-based experience of the jnana that comes when the vasanas are gone and self-attention is natural. That's why Bhagavan says, Bhava Baladinda, from Bhava Bala itself, Bhavanatita Sadbhava. Go beyond all the non-self as bhavanas to be transcended, to be dropped. Sadbhava, just hold the I am. That is Parabhakti. He says that is the highest form of love. And from Parabhakti, the Ananya Bhakti, which itself is not different from Jnanam, when that becomes effort-free, that is the Atma Jnanam. So what is this knowledge that the Acharya is saying that will remove all the bondage? It is the Atma Jnana. So what we have covered here in the root teachings of Viveka Chudamani, that he is not going to ask us to go from one place to another. He is not going to ask us to seek for the solution in some other time, but he is going to ask us to look into what is true knowledge and In seeking the true knowledge, he is going to bring us to the Mula Viveka of Atma Anatma and show that the Atma Jnana or self knowledge or knowledge that itself is the self is the real liberation that you have been seeking as a mumukshu. For this, what we have to do to attain the jnana, self enquiry has to be done, says the work. So, this is the nearest to or direct representation of Bhagavan's teachings you will find in scriptures. That this particular scripture directly says that the self practice of self enquiry is the way to mukti. For this, what has to be done? The Acharya says you have to find a guru who has certain qualities, and you yourself should have certain qualities. Those are gone in detail in the work, but it is enough for us to know that the guru is essential. And fortunately for us, uh, the guru seeking us has been more stronger than we seeking him, and he has found us. And therefore, we can say that we have found him. That when we are able to look into the work like Viveka Chudamani, it is more true that the Guru Shakti has found us, and that is the relieving fact, because you don't need to inquire what is it that made you eligible to come to this work. Many of us, while going through such works, feel that we are not eligible for going through such works. But it is clear that it is the Guru Shakti, it is the Ishvara Shakti. Somehow or the other, it has deigned to select. Therefore, there must be a reason. All that we have to do is go ahead with the sadhana. So, find the good guru and practice the Atma Vicharam is the path. What is the path laid out for us? It is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. This is going to be looked at in detail, great detail in the work. What is Shravana? We can now determine that it is to know from the Guru what is the discrimination between self and non-self, between right and wrong, between the truth and the falsity. So here, since it is Vedanta, the truth and falsity discrimination as well as self, non-self discrimination will be the only basic ones. And as we are trying to point out, the self, non-self discrimination, if one can get at it, then the dissipation of energy in the non-self area is greatly minimized. No analysis of the non-self is entered into. All one's energy is conserved in letting go of the non-self and holding the self. So that is the Shravana you need to get. That what is the Viveka that you need to have to pursue? You get it from the Guru. Then what is Manana? Manana is actually practicing this. That the Shariratrayam and the Pancha Kosham are the non-self to be discriminated and freed of. The consciousness which is now identified with this non-self. Why am I enforcing this identified? This identification is the highest form of attachment. On this identification, the root attachment only, the other attachments are all there. When Bhagavan would be asked by some of those people, should I leave this? Should I leave the job? Should I leave this circumstance? Bhagavan will ask, what have they done? You have this root identity. You are saying, I am this body. I am this mental identity. Having this basic attachment to the non-self, then trying to make some peripheral change in that or this, moving a tumbler from this point to this point in the table. When the root problem is here, of what use is, what have they done? Bhagavan would ask. What has the work done for you? It has not done anything. Work detachedly does not affect jnana, he says. What is that detachment? If you take the duality of like and dislike, so the practice of that looking at things without the like and dislike is actually living detachment. What is it to see the beauty between Buddhist meditation and the Hindu meditation? If you can make that connect, this is one of the gifts we got in one of these sessions in the last 1 or 2 weeks. It's only my job to share these hacks, share these gifts that the Atma Swarupa gives us. See the beautiful connect between the Hindu meditation and Buddhist meditation. Very simple. Is that the Hindu meditation says everything is God. Meditate on whatever you see as Rama Swarupa, as Shiva Swarupa, as Ramana Swarupa. What is the Buddhist asking us to do? How this came about was there were a few Buddhists in our home last Wednesday or so, and we were listening to their meditation of how to observe things. And I had my mother-in-law by the side who was a Rama Bhakta. So how to involve her, how to bring her, there was a look and immediately it clicked. Amma, you are just trying to see everything as Rama. What they are trying to do, if as everything is Rama, not if everything is Rama, as everything is Rama, why do you look at them with like and dislike? Why do you look at the sensory world with like and dislike? What happens when you practice that, when you start observing without like, the whole of the sensory area is full of Rama. There is no discrimination there. And that speaker that day was saying, when once you are free of the sensory objects, you are able to look at your reactions. Somebody is speaking, your reactions confuse the listening. As Madam was saying, many of us are good speakers, but listening becomes a problem because our reactions to the speech are so high that we don't listen. Whereas what the Buddhist says is that the moment you are free of the whole sensory area as Rama, as you're looking at that without like and dislike, you can look at your reactions. What are your reactions except Rama? Why do you look at your reactions with like and dislike? As it is all Rama, look at it without like and dislike. You will be able to see your originating thoughts. What is this originating thoughts? Once the reactionary thoughts, the reacted objects are gone, you don't anymore feel that the vasanas are created by the objects. The vasanas are even more deep rooted, that there are originating thoughts. And you are able to get to the originating thoughts only when you are looking at the sensory world as Rama, the breath world as Rama, the reactionary world as Rama, because you are looking at that without like and dislike. You can see the originating thoughts. What are the root vasanas? And can you look at the root vasanas? Like the knowledge and ignorance is a root vasana. The dyad arises as a root. It's an originating thought. And when you can look at for whom is this knowledge and ignorance, for me, you can see that you are saying that all the originating thoughts, originating vasanas are also Rama. Why should I look at them with like and dislike? That is when the Buddhist meditation also comes to the self-witnessing itself. And the Atmavichari also comes to the self-witnessing itself. And you understand the significance of Bhagavan saying that all the other things are rooted in the I, non-I. If you keep holding the I, all those layers of meditation will happen automatically. You will find the significance why the Buddhist is saying like this, why the Hindu meditation is saying it's all God. Both click together. There is no escape from self-knowledge. The self-knowledge becomes as simple as the amla in one's palm. And Bhagavan says even that is not true. It's even more direct than that. But that is the Shravana Manana. The Manana part is this, that you have to discriminate how you have identified with the senses, how you have identified with the Panchakoshas, the sensory body, the prana, the manas, the intellect, and the Anandamaya Kosha. When you remove the identity from these five with the understanding of what all these meditations are, The like and dislike dyad, it arises for whom? If you ask, you will come to the self. And what is the root reason why they have kept this like dislike? Can you look at objects without like and dislike? To bring in detachment. What is called as detachment is nothing but like and dislike. There is no conflict in the teachings in the meditation. Only different words are used. Can you do the work without attachment? Can you look after your family without attachment? It is not it is not an obstruction to jnana, says Bhagavan. What is this detachment? Look at without like and dislike. And this diet, what it is based on? It is based on self, non-self. Once you understand this and start holding the I, holding the Atma Vicharam, that is practice of manana. And what is this nididhyasana? Nididhyasana is gently but surely holding the I. No non-self is now disturbing. You are driving the car without any distraction, because there are no other thought waves. All the other thought waves are gone. You can see with mature drivers that their driving will be with total detachment. Somebody comes there from there, already gently removing from the accelerator will be there. That's because the mana klesha is not there. There is absolute purity, and it's totally present. That one is totally present. It translates into the ease of action, but the ease of action itself is not proof of self-knowledge. The ease of action itself is not proof of self-knowledge. Ease of action is shows that the action is not an obstruction to self-knowledge. That clarity, when you have, nididhyasana starts, and that is how the whole work is laid out. The whole work is laid out as a movement between Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. I think one of you has to highlight the time for me. Yeah, 7:35. Can you just give me an inkling when the time is running out? And what happens with the uh, Nididhyasana? The Atma Anusandhana starts. The Atma Anusandhana is the core sadhana in the work. Self-enquiry leads you to Atma Anusandhana. Atma Anusandhana is referred to in Viveka Chudamani like akin to the churning of curds for butter. What is the churning? The churning activity is constant self-enquiry. What is the curds? The curds is the heart, the hridayam, where the Lord is present as fullness of unconditioned love. The inquiring who am I is happening in the heart, and that is a constant churning. What is the kaivalyam? What is the butter that is going to come out? The butter that is going to come out is Atmanishta. Once we come to Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, the Guru will say, this is what you have to do. Abide in the self. Whenever the non-self comes, you understand that you are not going to move into that area. I am going to hold the I again. Because the self, non-self is the root Viveka which is required to be held. Bhagavan says the work points out that this is the time, then there will be a recrudescence of originating vasanas. That there will be a huge rush of vasanas which will destabilize the sadhaka from the Atma Anusandhana. And there will be approach to the Guru. What is happening? Major Chadwick will come and ask Bhagavan that at this stage I am nearing the holding of the self. I am detaching myself from the body, but there is great fear. I am attacked by bouts of fear. What is happening, Bhagavan? And don't feel Bhagavan is not there now. We will be actively talking to uh, the divinity. That this conversation, what is recorded, is very much going to happen in each one of you. You will be talking to the source, and till the source merges or allows you to merge with it or find the truth of it, this conversation will be there. And what Chadwick asks It's not that you have to ask to a physical being. You will understand. You will have relationship with the Guru inside. And the Bhagavan says it's only the lack of parichaya. Just like you don't have introduction to somebody, there is fear, isn't it? Even if an angel comes, if it is unknown to us, we won't know it is angel, and we will say we will have always have doubt, especially if you have had some experience in the insurance area or banking area. Everything that you will look for will be looked for with doubt. Now, the point is that Bhagavan says to Chadwick, it is only the lack of parichaya, the lack of practice. You are still attached to the body, therefore the darkness is still present. You are still not introduced to the glory of the self, to the glorious nature of the self, the all-encompassing nature of the self. Therefore, you are not letting go of the limited and identifying with the unlimited. Continue the practice and your abundance will come. So, when you practice Atmanusandhana, the work is going to say that this is the time, be ready, that there will be challenges to you. When you are easy with the laya, when you are comfortable with whatever you have in the world, this will not come to you. But then when you want to get some real happiness, what is the reality of this world which is so unreliable? the These are the times when financial markets are so up and down. These are the times to understand the unreliability of the laya given by those securities, the false securities in the non-self, and how secure self-attention is. The for whom is this insecurity in the financial market? Just a line in the graph means the financial destruction of so many people, and the trauma that they undergo is all fundamentally because they have searched for happiness in the wrong place, says the Acharya. That it is in the self, and the Atma Anusandhana will become stronger and stronger, and it will result in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the continuous experience of the I. With constant practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, there is this experience of Sahaja Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is where the objects are completely consumed by the light of the self. That is a particular situation where the objects are completely not present. The light of the self is seen. It is akin to pralaya, that even in pralaya, the self is there, is the realization in the nirvikalpa. But the question becomes, is it only in the pralaya that the self is there? Is the self not there doing srishti? If it is not there in particular time or particular place, can we call it as the real self? Obviously not. Therefore, from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the Acharya and Bhagavan, they teach us Sahaja Samadhi, that has the experience of I becomes so spontaneous and natural that your interactions with the world do not affect the Anubhava in the least. Now, we see in the Puranas, great king who brings down the Ganges from the heavens down to, when he is in the kingdom and realizes the falsity of the securities in the money and in the power, he takes up complete renunciation. With great struggle, which is opposed by everyone in the kingdom, he moves to some other kingdom, handing over his kingdom to an enemy, experiences the self, and then he is requested to take the rulership of a country not known to him. He is begging in that country. Someone recognizes his greatness and expresses the trouble, and by then his nishta has become so sahaja that he says how taking care of these people is going to affect that. He takes that, and the enemy whom he had seated as the king in his own country, he passes away. And the people of his country come running to him, and he is now managing both the countries with hardly any effect on the nishtha. The anubhava of the Adhara Atmaswarupa is natural. That in his case, he decides to run two countries. How is it going to affect the experience of the self? So, from in the Acharya's case, it is setting up of all the pitas, the working of so many scriptures. How is it going to affect the Sahaja Nishtha? So, from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, one learns the art of abiding naturally in the self. That is where this is the happiness that Bhagavan refers to in the first paragraph. That happiness is your very nature. That happiness is the very nature of all living beings, experienced by each living being in deep sleep when the ego and the world are in laya sthiti. They are in laya sthiti, and you are indirectly experiencing the happiness of the self. Now, in the waking state itself, free yourself, detached work, free yourself from the world of objects. Self enquiry, identify with Nirvikalpa Samadhi, come to the thought free state where everything is light, but that is not good enough. If you will be disturbed by the flying of a sparrow, if your samadhi is affected by the flap of the wings of a bird, can it be called samadhi? Obviously not. The Sahaja Samadhi Sthiti indicates that God has really become God in our heart. God is realized in his natural real form as the Atma Swarupa, as the one beyond affectation by the triputis and the dyads. And that experience is going on so naturally that the working of the body does not affect that experience in the least. This is what Bhagavan gives us in the death experience also. While signing off in the death experience, Bhagavan says that the identity with the deathless spirit, the self of all, was going on like a Shruti note in music. While the other notes are being played, the Shruti note never goes away. Similarly, even when the body was speaking, when it was writing, when it was doing other actions, the deathless spirit, the self of all, was going on as I, without a break inside naturally, and one was living in the self. One learned the art of living in the self itself. The from so the Acharya and the work take us through Nirvikalpa Samadhi to Sahaja Samadhi, and it takes us through the Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. As you efface the I, the doership goes, the knowership goes, the beingship goes. When the doership goes, already the Jiva Bhava is gone. What is called in Bhakti Marga as Salokya Mukti is naturally experienced, but it is not described in terms of the world, it is described only in terms of self-attention. In the Jnana Bhumikas, Jivan Mukti is the fourth stage. You will find that this is being described. What is Videha Mukti? Videha Mukti is also described in the work. We can go through that when the opportunity is given, that as we did with Dakshinamurti Stotram, probably we can look at this work also as some of the essential parts and connect the essential parts with self-inquiry and understand that the root teaching, root gift they are giving us is that amongst all the discriminations you are having, amongst all the Vivekas, all the dyads and triads, have a strong Viveka about self, non-self. Because as all other thoughts are arising only after the I thought, all other dyads and triads are arising only after the root dyad of self and non-self, the I and non-I arises. See the importance of that and hold the I. One will go through the whole work. One will understand how Bhagavan has condensed that in introduction. The introduction and overview is not merely a summary. It is actually looking at whatever is required in the sadhana, in the work. Then we leisurely go into the work and carry out the details also, assimilate the details and understand why samadhama and all have been mentioned. From the perspective of having self-enquiry, obviously that is to turn inward. Obviously, I have been dissipating energy so much in the sensory area, in the mind area. So samadhama are such natural contributions by the rishis so that the turning inward process starts. So with the practice of self-enquiry, you understand the beauty of the work, the beauty of the details of the work. But even before going into the details of the work, you enjoy the overview of Bhagwan, of the whole work. In about 4 or 5 pages, he covers the whole work and puts on us the responsibility of what is it we have to do. We have to find and hold on to the discrimination between self and non-self and practice the holding of the I in self-enquiry. All the things that are assured by the Acharya and Bhagwan are bound to come through because that is already our nature. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana